That Russian President Vladimir Putin right now has been operating covertly as far as Russia is concerned. But he's gone now overtly with the military action so far with the separatist Republican states, the two of them that we are discussing with the panelists. I'd raised, of course, this concern that also Kenya is bound to be affected by this, and we ran you by that particular story, and we'd get a reaction of the ambassador to the UN, of course, representative of the UN Security Council as well. This is Ambassador Martin Kimani. We are joined this morning by Ambassador Rasas Wencha, who is the chair of Africa Capacity Building Foundation. Also, we have Ahmed Hashi, who is the Horn of Africa analyst. Also, we do have with us Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is the conflict and resolution expert, and we have also Dr. Hassan Khanenje, the director of the Horn Institute, and Professor Naomi Damba, foreign policy and defense analyst as well, and Peter Biarajak joining us all the way from Washington, D.C., who is the president of Revive South Sudan. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right. Let's just begin from where we are and the reaction now that Kenya has come to the fore. We see it was a bit reserved, giving traction for diplomacy to take sway at the end of the day, but it seems now, as I mentioned, diplomacy is failing, and Vladimir Putin now has gone full throttle to invade Ukraine, as it were. What does this portend, just not only for Kenya, but for the entire world as it is?
The ball, to my colleague, I think someone once said that diplomacy is war by other means. And when war breaks out, it means diplomacy has failed. I would like to say three things. Number one is I have never seen, in the age that I am in, or the history that I have read, the crisis in Europe being so bad since the fall of the Soviet Union. Even during the time of the Cold War, the Americans and the Russians never came close to fighting as they came to fighting in Ukraine and in Europe during this time. So it is a very dangerous situation. And what is the response of us as Africans to this question? I think Ambassador Kimani puts it very well. I thought that the speech he gave was very balanced, and I think that it was well done. However, I feel that this issue of territorial disputes that Ambassador Kimani brought up, there's no question in my mind that infringing on Ukraine's territorial sovereignty is illegal under international law. There's no question about that. But apart from the cultural, economic and cultural and sociological issues involved in this crisis between the NATO and Russia is the core issue of security. The Russians, the Russians in 1991, when the fall of the Soviet Union, had clear acceptance from NATO and the United States that the NATO was not going to go towards Russia. They were not going to go eastwards towards Russia. They were not going to create satellite states from the independent states. And they were going to guarantee that Russia's security was paramount. So this debacle did not happen. And you have seen, and we've talked about this issue subsequently in our program, where there's been conflicts in 2014 and so forth and so on. And now it has come to a head. The Russians have reacted virulently over this issue of NATO and Ukraine. And I think that it is very important for us to understand the Russian perspective. There is no question in my mind, and most people agree, that Ukraine is a sovereign state. However, everybody knows what happened to the Warsaw Pact. Everybody knows what happened to the Soviet Union. If NATO did not encroach on Russian territory in this way, the Russian neighborhood in this way, I don't think this conflict would have been there. Second of all, the Russians are saying that we're going to get economic embargo anyway, that the Americans and the Europeans are hell-bent on putting an embargo on us. So I think that the Russians' bear has been put in a corner, and I think that they have reacted in a very wrong way. I think that it just shows you where diplomacy in the 21st century is today. There is a huge void in international relations as far as multilateralism is concerned. Mr. Kimani is right in saying that multilateralism is dead. And I can also add that liberal hegemony has also died in Ukraine, because the idea that the world is going to be faxed a democratic text and that everybody has to follow is, I think, a recipe for disaster. Because Russia has not had a democracy in 1,000 years.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Right, in 1,000 years, I think that will be a nice entry point also for Ambassador Erastus Moinche on this. And welcome back. You are at the EU-Africa, the EU Summit, and maybe also you can update us a bit on that as well, and then you chime in on what we're talking about briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Idbal, and also good morning to Kenyans and also to my fellow panelists. Yes, starting with the AU-EU Summit, of course it was in Brussels. It was held against the backdrop of what we see as the pandemic, COVID, but also Europe was very much preoccupied with what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, and of course what is also happening in West Africa, because don't forget that France is the chair of the European Union at this point in time, and France is facing big challenges in West Africa.
Yes.
In the backlash of what is happening, also discourse. And thirdly, of course, the huge inflation that is now around the world and how the world is hurting. And so that is the environment under which this summit took place. But the summit was one that pronounced itself on a number of issues, which if you wish we can come to touch them later on, or we touch them now. But key among those, of course, is the economics of it. Europe, to me, if I was to write a story out of it, the headline would have been, Europe is now responding to China's influence in Africa. By giving about 150 billion euros, which is mainly for infrastructure development.
Thank you.
But underneath you would see it is really responding to China.
Yeah, it's responding to China.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course that is another topic, just all
which we can come to later on.
Yeah, but now the reactions are on
now,
what is happening
on Ukraine, the world has never been to such a dangerous moment as we are at the moment, and as my colleague has underlined. This crisis has got three dimensions. There is the historical factors, and I think Russia is exploiting those. But there are also developments that have taken place in Europe that indicate threats to Russia, but also the challenges of what is happening in Russia itself. So Russia is trying to cure itself by pointing to the enemy outside. And thirdly, you cannot link it also from what's happening globally. This disillusionment, which Russia is also part of the challenge, especially what you see populism, and Putin is trying to reinvent himself. Now, touching on the key issues, if you go back historically, why did we have Second World War? We had Second World War when Germany finally invaded Poland. And then Britain and France declared war. This is more or less close to that, what has happened now, because in effect, Russia has invaded Ukraine. And Russia can claim that Ukraine historically was part of Russia. But Europe has also made mistakes on this. Don't forget, when there was a war in Yugoslavia, Europe ended up recognizing some of those breakaway republics, like Montenegro, the others, Kosovo, and where Russia kept on reminding them that this will come back to haunt you. And that's why you can see Ambassador Kimani's statement is very much nuanced, because he knows that Putin has got real issues on the table. And I think what you can see then, the kind of sanctions that have been put, which are going to hurt us and everybody, it is not full-scale sanctions. You know, what President Biden calls, these are defensive moves. He hasn't moved to offensive sanctions. Now, defensive in the sense that they are asking Yeltsin to hold on or to push back. When they go to offensive, it means they will be putting tanks in Europe, and that's a